everyone! I'm going to be reading chapter 2 of The Secret Garden. Some of these chapters are quite long, so I'm going to split them into 2 or 3 parts. Chapter 2, Mistress Mary Quite Contrary. Mary had liked to look at her mother from a distance, and she had thought her very pretty. But as she knew very little of her, she could scarcely have been expected to love her or to miss her very much when she was gone. She did not miss her at all, in fact, and as she was a self-absorbed child, she gave her entire thought to herself, as she had always done. If she had been older, she would no doubt have been very anxious at being left alone in the world. But she was very young, and as she had always been taken care of, she supposed she always would be. What she thought was that she would like to know if she was going to nice people, who would be polite to her, and give her her own way as her ayah and the other native servants had done. She knew that she was not going to stay at the English clergyman's house, where she was taken at first. She did not want to stay. The English clergyman was poor, and had 5 children all nearly the same age, and they wore shabby clothes, and were always quarrelling and snatching toys from each other. Mary hated their untidy bungalow, and was so disagreeable to them that after the first day or 2, nobody would play with her. By the second day, they had given her a nickname which made her furious. It was Basil who thought of it at first. Basil was a little boy with impudent blue eyes and a turned-up nose, and Mary hated him. She was playing by herself under a tree, just as she had been playing the day the cholera broke out. She was making heaps of earth and a path for a garden. Basil came and stood near to watch her. Presently he got rather interested and suddenly made a suggestion. "Why don't you put a heap of stones there and pretend it's a rockery," he said. "There in the middle," and he leaned over her to point. "Go away," cried Mary. "I don't want boys. Go away." For a moment Basil looked angry, and then he began to tease. He was always teasing his sisters. He danced round and round her and made faces and sang and laughed. "Mistress Mary Quite Contrary, how does your garden grow? With silver bells and cockle shells and marigolds all in a row." He sang it until the other children heard and laughed too, and the crosser Mary got, the more they sang, "Mistress Mary Quite Contrary." And after that, as long as she stayed with them, they called her Mistress Mary Quite Contrary when they spoke of her to each other, and often when they spoke to her. "You are going to be sent home," Basil said to her, "at the end of the week, and we're glad of it." "I'm glad of it too," answered Mary. "Where is home?" "She doesn't know where home is," said Basil, with a 7-year-old scorn. "It's England, of course. Our grandmamma lives there, and our sister Mabel was sent to her last year. You are not going to your grandmamma. You have none. You are going to your uncle. His name is Mr. Archibald Craven." "I don't know anything about him," snapped Mary. "I know you don't," Basil answered. "You don't know anything. Girls never do. I heard father and mother talking about him. He lives in a great big desolate old house in the country, and no one goes near him. He's so cross he won't let them, and they wouldn't come even if he would let them. He's a hunchback, and he's horrid." "I don't believe you," said Mary, and she turned her back and stuck her fingers in her ears because she would not listen any more. But she thought over it a great deal afterward, and when Mrs. Crawford told her that night that she was going to sail away to England in a few days, and going to her uncle, Mr. Archibald Craven, who lived at Misselthwaite Manor, she looked so stony and stubbornly uninterested that they did not know what to think about her. They tried to be kind to her, but she only turned her face away when Mrs. Crawford attempted to kiss her, and held herself stiffly when Mr. Crawford patted her shoulder. "She is such a plain child," Mrs. Crawford said pityingly afterwards, "and her mother was such a pretty creature. She had a very pretty manner too, and Mary has the most unattractive ways I ever saw in a child. The children call her Mistress Mary Quite Contrary, and though it's naughty of them, one can't help understanding it." Perhaps if her mother had carried her pretty face and her pretty manners oftener into the nursery, Mary might have learned some pretty ways too. It is very sad, now the poor beautiful thing is gone, to remember that many people never even knew that she had a child at all. I believe she scarcely ever looked at her, sighed Mrs. Crawford. When her ayah was dead, there was no one to give a thought to the little thing. Think of the servants running away and leaving her all alone in that deserted bungalow. Colonel McGrew said he nearly jumped out of his skin when he opened the door and found her standing by herself in the middle of the room.